Hello, my name's Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Siegfried, the third of the ring operas by Richard Wagner. And I'd like to go through each of the acts and indeed the scene, seeing how the leitmotifs, those pithy little themes, relate to the drama and to the characters within this opera. Wagner started Siegfried in 1856, just after Valkyrie, but it wasn't completed till many years later, till 1871. That's because Wagner took a 12-year break in its composition after he composed the second act. And in the meantime, he composed Tristan und Isolde and Die Meistersingers, and then he finally came back to Siegfried in 1869. And then it was finished by 1871. It received its premiere in the context of the whole ring in 1876 at the Bayreuth Festspielhaus. Now, Siegfried has got its own particular charm to it within the ring cycle. It's got a very palpable fairy tale atmosphere to it. We have a hero, of course, in the person of Siegfried, the free hero who Wotan hopes will wrest the ring away from the influence of Alberic. We have a sleeping princess in the person of Brunhilde, who has to be awoken with a kiss. We have talking birds. We have magic. We have a dragon that needs to be slain. We have an evil stepmother, if you like, in the person of Mime, although perhaps more like an evil stepfather. We have all these ingredients in this wonderful opera, and it really is a fantastic work in its own right, even if it perhaps hasn't always been the most popular of the ring operas. Now let's begin right at the very opening, Act 1. We have a prelude, there's a prelude to each of the acts, and the prelude is kind of starts in a rather murky way, with a timpani drum roll, and then we have some ideas which represent the Nibelungen, and of course Mime himself, Alberic's brother, who has been Siegfried's guardian. So we have this idea, and many of these ideas we first heard in Rheingold, so we haven't heard them for a little while. That idea perhaps suggests the scheming character of Mime. And then we have the very familiar Nibelungen rhythm. First heard all the way back on the anvils in Rheingold. And we also hear this, we're reminded of this motif, which to me suggests the terror of Alberic's control over the Nibelungen. We have the ring itself, of course. And then we have the sword motif, which was introduced in Valkyrie. So this prelude reminds us of many of the leitmotifs from Rheingold and of the sword, the importance of the sword, which will certainly be essential elements of Siegfried. And then Mime comes onto the stage and he's expressing his frustrations. Siegfried isn't an easy person to live with, and Mime has been kind of taking care of him since he was a baby. But Mime also has his own motives for bringing Siegfried up. He wants Siegfried to get the ring for himself. We're reminded that the ring is in the custody of Fafnir, one of the giants, who's by now turned himself into a dragon. And we're reminded of the dragon motif, which we heard in Rheingold. And so on. You have something of Mime's arrogance as well. And so on. Then Siegfried comes on the scene. This kind of muscle-bound young hero, and you can see why Mime is a bit fed up with him, because he rushes on the stage with a bear of all things, and he's tormenting Mime with this bear. And Siegfried has this famous horn call. And allied to that, we have another idea associated with Siegfried, that to do with his anger, or his kind of impetuosity. And that kind of rages away. Then Siegfried begins to question where he came from to Mime. And we hear this idea which represents longing. And so on. We hear bird calls, and we're reminded that Siegfried is a Welsung. And allied to that, we hear the Welsung sorrow motif, which Siegfried's father sung before he was murdered. Eventually Mime tells Siegfried about his mother, and we're reminded of that glorious love theme from Valkyrie. And so on. And then we hear Siegfried's main motif. Such a stirring melody. There's one final motif associated with Siegfried, that of his freedom. Siegfried learns about Nothung, the sword, which Wotan splintered. It belonged to Siegfried's father, didn't it? He plucked it out of the tree in Valkyrie, which Wotan then shattered into pieces just before Siegmund died. And Siegfried learns of Nothung, this sword, and he demands it to be reforged. And we have this new idea which represents something of Siegfried's freedom. And then Siegfried rushes off into the wood again, and Mime is left despairing about how these fragments could be reforged. Scene 2 then comes, and we have the Wanderer coming onto the scene and engaging with Mime. And the Wanderer is basically Wotan in disguise. Wotan who's going around keeping an eye on Siegfried because of course he wants Siegfried as the free hero to get the ring back. And Mime has to ask the Wanderer 3 questions, which is a great device to recap on the previous action from the beginning of Rheingold. And the Wanderer has this wonderful motif, really stirring and noble. Now, during the course of these questions, we're reminded of the giants. And so on. We're reminded of that wonderful Valhalla motif. And we're reminded of Erda as well. We're going to hear more from Erda in Act 3. And then inevitably it's the Wanderer's turn to ask Mime some questions. And Mime, of course, is quaking in his boots. We're reminded of Loga and the magic fire music. And so on. Then we're into scene 3. And here Mime tricks Siegfried into the quest to slay Fafner. And we hear this idea very similar to the Nibelung rhythm, which is this driving rhythm which represents work. Dum dum da dum dum da dum dum da dum dum da. Then Siegfried starts forging the fragments of Nothung himself. Mime can't do it, as Siegfried starts doing it. And Siegfried sings a kind of ode to Nothung, his sword. It's a really great moment in the opera. And he starts, we have these two new ideas associated with Siegfried forging Nothung. We have this one. And we have this idea as well, a bit busier. Mime sees how this could work out for him. Siegfried forging his own sword from the fragments of Nothung. But Mime then makes up this plan to poison Siegfried after he's killed Fafner and taken the gold. And then the end of this act is wonderful. They're both singing together, which Wagner, you know, he's kind of breaking his own rules here, because you know, at the beginning of Valkyrie he wouldn't have dreamed of having characters singing together, but he seems to have changed his mind somewhat here. And Mime's kind of fantasising about this future power he shall have, while Siegfried wields the finished Nothung and he slices his anvil into two. And it's an absolutely thrilling end to this act. Act 2, like Act 1, starts in a rather murky way. We have the prelude with this new motif representing Fafner. It's this idea. We often more feel that idea rather than hear it in the timpanis, etc. We're reminded of the curse. Etc. And then what really, the motif that really dominates this act is this one, hate. We're reminded of the power of the ring as well. And then finally we see Alberic. We haven't seen him for a long time. Alberic's back, and he has this kind of face-off with the Wanderer in the forest where Fafner the dragon lives, where he's guarding the gold. That hate motif is all the way through this music, because obviously they loathe each other, these two characters. We're reminded of the need of the gods to get this ring back. We're reminded of this motif from Rheingold as well, when the giants are demanding payment for their work in building Valhalla. We're reminded of Wotan's frustration. You might remember this from his lengthy monologue in Wagner. Then eventually the Wanderer wakes Fafner, the dragon. And this is the first awakening. There's 3 awakenings in this opera, and this is the first one. Then the Wanderer leaves Alberic, and we hear Wotan's grief as he leaves. Hear this motif. Then we're into scene 2 of Act 2. We're back to Mime and Siegfried. Mime is preparing Siegfried about the horror of Fafner the dragon. But of course, Siegfried has never experienced fear. But what's really ingenious about this moment in the opera is Mime is suggesting that Siegfried will be frightened by the dragon. But instead of hearing Fafner's motif, we hear this, which represents the sleeping Brunhilde. Siegfried does eventually feel fear, but it's not here, it's later on at the end of the opera when he meets Brunhilde. And that's such a wonderful way of leitmotifs working at a kind of psychological and emotional way. It's extremely sophisticated. Siegfried then has this lengthy monologue. We hear that longing motif as well. And then we have this glorious moment where Siegfried's alone in the forest. And the forest is so reminiscent of German folklore, isn't it? And the forest starts speaking. We hear the forest murmurs, something like this. And then we hear these wonderful magical bird calls. We hear this, and we hear this one. And that last one will become important a little bit later after the dragon is killed. Siegfried comically tries to imitate the wood bird, and he kind of starts cutting a reed, trying to get the right notes, and failing. Then eventually just pulls his horn out and starts his horn call and his very famous solo. And here Wagner is perhaps suggesting that, you know, music might be able to rival even the beauty of nature. This whole forest scene, I think, is very much harks back to perhaps Beethoven, you know, his Sixth Symphony, for instance, with those wonderfully evocative sounds, you know, in the Pastoral Symphony. But perhaps also looks forward to a composer, maybe Debussy, for instance. It really is a really amazing part of this opera. Siegfried then slays Fafner finally, and at the height of this fight we hear the motifs of Siegfried and Fafner clash as they fight. And once Fafner's killed, Siegfried touches Fafner's blood, and magically now he can hear what the birds are saying. And we hear this wonderful soprano solo based on those bird calls, telling Siegfried to be careful of Mime and to, you know, and to guide him onwards. But then in scene 3, the Liebelung brothers are back together, and this is quite a comical part of the opera, because we're reminded of this kind of stumbling motif right at the very beginning of Rheingold, where Alberic's kind of slipping and sliding around going after the Rhine maidens, and that returns here as the brothers bicker and fight over the ring. And then Mime tries to poison Siegfried, but Siegfried kills him first. And then we have the return of the Rheingold motif. I love this moment in the opera because it's quite funny, because Mime, of course, doesn't want to reveal his intentions to Siegfried until the very last moment when he's about to kill him, or he wants to kill him. But because of the magic of the wood bird, no matter what Mime says, Siegfried just hears, you know, Mime's true intentions, that he wants to kill him, etc. And it's really funny, no matter what Mime does, he can't help but kind of spill out this what he wants to do to Siegfried. It's really funny. And after Mime's killed, you kind of feel a bit sorry for Mime. Yes, Mime is evil. Yes, he wants the ring. Yes, he's always had, you know, an ulterior motive in bringing Siegfried up. But he's quite a charming character, and you do get quite attached to him. And he's a really great creation of Wagner's, I think. Siegfried then takes stock of where he is, and then he gets guidance from this singing wood bird now, calling him onwards to find Brunhilde through the magic fire. And the act ends in this wonderfully feathery lightness. And that's where we have a break. Wagner stopped work on Siegfried for 12 years to compose no less masterpieces than Tristan und Isolde and Die Meistersingers. And then in 1869, he comes back. The Prelude to Act Three is one of the most wonderful moments in all opera, in my humble opinion. And it's such an incredibly exciting, sophisticated, profound and moving piece of music. Essentially, this prelude is a portrait of Wotan himself, and we hear all of these motifs associated with him combined in ingenious ways. And it's almost as if after this, of course, Wagner himself developed even more as a composer during that 12-year break. And he's come back to this project with a renewed vigour and an even more heightened virtuosity over his handling of the orchestra. We have Erda, we have then the corresponding idea to Erda, you know, it goes down, the Götterdämmerung idea. We have the Valkyries and the accompaniment, we have Wotan's frustration, we have Wotan's grief, we have the Wanderer motif, we have the power of the ring, and at the climax we have the return to the magic sleep music, which I always look forward to in the ring. I think it's so beautiful. Such a wonderful piece of music, this prelude. Very short, but absolutely marvellous. It's here Wagner's music is really getting a life of its own, perhaps even beyond the drama. Then the Wanderer summons Erda, who we haven't seen since Rheingold. This is the second awakening. Erda's asleep, he wakes her up, and we hear this new motif which is associated with the awakened Erda. It goes like this. That idea is peppered throughout this scene. Erda is questioned by the Wanderer. We keep hearing that sleep motif and the spear and fate's motif, all these ideas we've become accustomed to over the operas so far. And then the Wanderer expresses his confidence in Siegfried, the free hero. We hear this new idea, which is often called the bequest motif, which reminds me a bit of Meistersingers actually. It goes like this. Then we're into scene 2. Erda goes back underground And finally the Wanderer meets Siegfried, who he's resting all his hopes on. And Siegfried is pretty horrible to him. You know, Siegfried in some respects is not a likeable character. You know, he's basically saying to Wotan or the Wanderer, you know, clear off, get out of the way, old man. And you can see the Wanderer kind of losing his patience with him, even though, you know, his whole future hinges on Siegfried. And then in a pivotal moment, Siegfried and the Wanderer kind of square up to each other, and Siegfried shatters Wotan's spear. And this is such a dramatically important moment. From now on, it's the gods who fall away, and we realise that it's Siegfried, the human, who is going to be the main driving force in the opera from now on. The time of the gods is over, in a sense. From now on, humanity is going to take centre stage. And then Siegfried goes on his way. We don't see Wotan again. I believe Wagner, you know, in his stage directions, there's a place for him at the end of Götterdämmerung, a non-singing role, to see the fall of the gods. But really, he's gone now. It's all about Siegfried now and Brunhilde. And then Siegfried goes on his way in this beautiful tone poem, again full of orchestral virtuosity in the way Wagner scores this music. We hear plenty of Siegfried's horn call, and he goes on his way through the magic fire into scene 3, where he finds Brunhilde. At first he thinks that she's just a sleeping warrior, a man, but then takes her armour off and finally kisses her. And we hear this high violin climax here, with the fate motif underneath. It's an extremely beautiful moment of this opera. We hear a couple of new motifs as well as Siegfried finds Brunhilde, and he begins to feel his sense of fear and also a sense of extreme passion. We hear love, again, love as fulfilment this time. And so on. We hear this descending idea which represents passion. And then finally, after he kisses Brunhilde, she awakens. This is the final awakening in this opera, the most significant one. Siegfried is burning with passion as Brunhilde awakens. And we hear the revival motif, another wonderful moment in this opera. Wonderful chords. Brunhilde realises with a great sense of terror that she's no longer this immortal goddess. She's now a frail woman, a frail human. But we do hear some more love ideas as the two notice their mutual attraction. We hear this idea, love's ecstasy. We hear the return of that bequest idea from before. We're reminded of Wotan's love as well. And so on. Then they finally declare their love for each other. And we hear this new idea which Wagner used in his Siegfried Idyll, his birthday present for his wife Cosima, and that goes like this. I think Schoenberg was very much influenced by that when he wrote his Verklärte Nacht. And then we hear the final new motif of this opera, which is this idea, as their two voices come together in ecstasy. Again, Wagner breaking his own rules. You know, he didn't want people to sing together, but obviously he's, after Tristan, etc., his ideas have changed. And we hear this new idea, which is kind of Baroque-like in a sense, which is called Love's Resolution. And then the whole opera ends in this jubilant, ecstatic note as the two lovers come together. And it's a really stirring end to this wonderful instalment of the Ring saga. That last scene in that last act of Siegfried really is, there's nothing quite as lyrical in the Ring before that. It really is a tremendous moment, and you can sense that Wagner's stretching his genius to accommodate this wonderful moment in the story. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been useful. I'll put the description of the music and the drama in the description below, if that helps. If you like this, please click like and please subscribe. And if you have any pieces you'd like me to look at, please put them in the comments below. Thank you very much.